All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You know that frustrating feeling when you can understand English perfectly,
Yeah.
but you just can't seem to speak it?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to tackle that today.
Absolutely.
We are diving into a really interesting podcast called I Can Understand English, but I Can't Speak.
Okay.
It's from this series called Learn English Podcast. Said podcast and chill, and it's fascinating stuff.
I can't wait.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah.
This podcast we're looking at, starts off by saying so many learners,
Right.
they get stuck in this place, where they understand everything.
Yeah.
But then the moment it's time to speak,
Totally.
they just freeze up.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that way?
I know I have.
Yeah. So
Especially with
why does this happen?
well, the podcast gives a couple of reasons.
Okay.
And one of the biggest ones is this fear of making mistakes. You know?
Nobody wants to sound silly.
Yeah, and it's funny because we all make mistakes when we're learning. I mean, that's how we learn.
It's part of the process.
It is, and the podcast really highlights this idea of fluency over perfection.
I love that.
It's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about being able to communicate.
Exactly.
And, sometimes...
And getting your point across.
Yeah, and being understood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a really important distinction, I think.
It is.
So the good news is you already have a lot of English knowledge.
You do.
You've been listening to this podcast.
That's right.
You understand what we're saying?
Yeah.
The trick is to unlock that knowledge and actually use it when you're speaking.
Right. And the podcast, actually.
So how do we do that?
Well, the podcast gives us some pretty good tips.
Okay, lay it on me.
One of them is daily speaking practice.
Okay.
Even if it's just talking to yourself.
Talking to yourself.
Yeah, practicing out loud.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
Sometimes I even answer myself.
Haha.
Right.
Another tip is shadowing.
Shadowing?
Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard of it, but tell me more.
So basically, it's like you're mimicking a native speaker.
Okay.
Like you're their shadow.
Oh, I see.
You're copying their pronunciation,
Oh.
their rhythm, their intonation.
So like if I were to shadow you right now, I would say, so basically it's like you're mimicking a native speaker.
Exactly like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a little strange.
It feels weird at first, but it's really effective.
Yeah.
And it forces you to pay attention to those subtle nuances,
Mhm.
the intonation, stress.
that we don't always think about.
Right, when we're learning grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it's not just about sounding native. It's also about internalizing those grammatical structures.
Okay.
Expanding your vocabulary in a natural way.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a really good exercise.
So find something you enjoy listening to and then shadow it.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And then of course, there's the real life conversations. That's important too.
I got to talk to people.
The podcast suggests language exchange programs, online platforms.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
But I think it's important to be strategic about it.
Okay.
How
so?
Find a partner who shares your interests,
Oh, okay.
who has similar learning goals.
Right.
Because you want to have quality conversations,
I see.
not just, superficial ones.
Right. It's about that connection.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
And then
And then there's recording yourself speaking,
oh, yeah.
which is
That's a good one.
always a little scary.
It can be scary, but it's so revealing.
Yes.
You can actually hear yourself.
It's like, oh my gosh, is that what I sound like?
Yeah. But it's helpful because
Arr.
you can pinpoint areas for improvement.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so I notice when I record myself speaking Spanish, I tend to rush through certain words. And so I'm like, okay, I got to slow down when I say those words.
Exactly. And then you can work on those specific things.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
So it's not just about, randomly talking to yourself. It's about being deliberate.
It is.
And
the podcast also suggests using simple conversation prompts.
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, like questions to get yourself talking.
Like, what kinds of questions?
Like, what did I do today?
Okay.
What am I looking forward to?
Oh, that's good.
Just simple things.
It gets you thinking in English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then as you get more comfortable, you can make the prompts more complex.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a lot of good tips here.
We do.
But I think one of the most important things
What's that?
is to celebrate those small victories.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when you finally master that grammar rule,
Yeah.
or you understand a joke in English for the first time.
Or you have a conversation and you don't freeze up. You know?
It's a big deal.
It is.
You got to celebrate those moments.
And if you look at the vocabulary, that's emphasized in this podcast, you know, fluency, confidence, hesitation, practice. It paints a picture
It does.
of this journey to becoming a fluent speaker.
So it's not about overnight miracles.
No.
It's about putting in the work and enjoying the ride.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to sum it all up, you've got the power to become a fluent English speaker.
You do.
It's all about finding the right tools and techniques.
And mindset.
And mindset.
That's right.
You've got to believe in yourself.
You do.
So what's the one small step you can take today to get closer to your goal of speaking fluent English?
Will you try shadowing? Will you record yourself speaking? Will you commit to 5 minutes of conversation practice?
It's up to you.
It is.
Every journey begins with a single step.
That's right.
So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start speaking.
That's right.
All right, everybody. That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, happy learning.